Welcome, everybody, to our fifth live broadcast of Lift Up Women in Life Sciences. Rosie, my co-host, and I, we're absolutely delighted to be back for our fifth live broadcast. And this month, we're going to be talking about diversity matters. So our topic is very much around women's superpowers in the workplace. And we have got two fabulous key speakers that we can't wait to bring into this live broadcast today, both Heather Moses and Jessica Smith. But before we do so, for those of you that are perhaps completely new to the Lift Up community, I want to talk to you about our mission statement. So what we live and breathe, and our mission for Lift Up is about connecting, inspiring and championing women right across the C-suite, academia through to C-suite in the life sciences industry. So we have collected and we've grown this community group since around August last year, and it's just continuing to grow month on and month out. So we're super excited about this. Before we then go into bringing Heather and Jessica into our live broadcast, I'm really keen to do a very top line introduction into myself and then Rosie. So my name is Louise Williams. I'm the operations director here at Fraser Dove International. I have been in staffing for about, I actually worked out, it's 18 years, 2005 this year, and life sciences specifically for 9 years, where I focused on clinical and medical recruitment. And I'm now the operations director at Fraser Dove. So that's a very quick top line about me. I've got a 2.5-year-old son and also a 6.5-year-old daughter. And I'm going to pass you over to Rosie now to do a little introduction onto herself.
Thank you. Thanks, Louise. And thanks everyone for joining us again. It seems like the audiences are getting bigger and bigger, and we're really reaching now across the globe. From my side, my name is Rosie. I'm a fellow ambassador of Lift Up, but I've also worked at Fraser Dove for just over 2 years. Previous to my time at Fraser Dove, I was working within the medical device field at Boston Scientific, where I was in the EMEA marketing team. And had the pleasure of working with some amazing female leaders who never let anything get in our way and really paved a path for why I should be doing the same for others in the community. Today, obviously, it's a live Q&A format, so we want you to get involved as much as possible from the audience. We are going to be pulling up your questions from the comments feed, so if you're here, if you're listening, please say who you are and where you're from. Like, hi, my name is Rosie and I'm from Fraser Dove and I'm in the UK. It'd be great to see some of you commenting and connecting via the feed.
Yes.
Later on, we will obviously open up the floor to live questions to our amazing guests. And when we do so, it'd be brilliant if you can put a capital Q before your question so we know that you'd like to ask it. We're going to get through as many as possible.
Thank you, Rosie. Thank you. So yes, please get engaged and say hello to everybody within the community. Just pop all of your comments into the news feed. Have we got a couple of people joining us already?
Yeah, Sarita, good. She says, good morning, everyone. Welcome. We've got Sophie from the UK who's looking to connect. Hello, Sophie. Oh, we've got LinkedIn user. That's just down to their privacy settings, but she's looking forward to the initiative. It seems we are really hitting across the globe. We've got Helen from the UK. We've got Georgetta from Toronto. Midwest USA. We've got Bree. Hi, Bree. Welcome to the forum. Oh, more coming in from
very
Canada.
Fast.
Yeah, they're rolling in now.
Up.
While everyone starts to join, introduce yourselves, please, in the comments feed, and let's hand over to Louise to bring on some really special guests.
Thank you very much, Rosie. So without further ado, I'm going to bring in Heather Moses. Heather, I have worked with in the past. Heather, it's absolutely lovely to have you join us on the Lift Up Live today. Would you be able to do an introduction to the audience for us?
Of course. Thank you, Louise. It's really, really great to be here with everybody. And I'll start with just a little bit about my background. And it's always a long and winding road, isn't it? So you don't just show up in a job like this out of nowhere. And I'm really excited to chat to everybody about it. So right now, my role is VP and Head of Medical Affairs for Europe and Canada with AstraZeneca Oncology. So it's a really exciting role. We're really growing and developing a lot of people, a lot of capabilities. And I couldn't do that with all of the career steps and things I've done in the past before. I'm Canadian, so I started out in laboratory medicine and pathobiology, of course, from academia, yes. From science to care, and in kind of the pharma industry after that. I did a number of sales roles as a field commercial, moved into roles as an MSL when I moved to the UK. And I've been in the UK since 2006, a really long time. So I moved countries. And here in the UK, I was at Roche for many, many years, nearly 14, through MSL, medical advisor, medical team lead, and had the chance to move to Basel in Switzerland to the global head office in medical affairs, and then back to the UK as head of oncology and medical for the whole organization, which was great. Back on an assignment this time to global marketing. So to lead global marketing, and then came back to the UK as medical director for Novartis. And through that, I worked through many disease areas, and it just shows how much you can learn. If you have faith in yourself, you can always learn something new. So I've gone from renal anemia, cardiovascular, cardiometabolism, the whole pipeline portfolio, like development and commercialization planning, breast cancer, MS, multiple sclerosis, and neuromyelitis optica, and then back to the whole oncology portfolio. So it just shows you can really move countries, move roles, do diverse kinds of functions, and it really helps you then be a more empathetic leader across functions and across people with these experiences. So thanks for having me.
No worries at
Amazing.
all, Heather. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal background. And it will be really interesting to delve more into detail, I think, throughout this live. Your exposure in terms of relocating to all of these different countries and offices and workplaces in terms of from a diversity and a culture and a leadership and a management perspective would be really interesting to get your insight into how they've differed. So thank you so much, Heather. I'm going to bring in Jessica, and then we've got some exciting questions for you. But Jessica Smith, lovely to have you a part of our live broadcast today. So thank you for joining. Would you be able to do the audience the honor of giving an introduction?
Yeah, my pleasure. First, yes, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm, incredibly excited about the topic and that sort of thing. So as you mentioned, Jessica Smith, I currently am the corporate vice president and chief regulatory officer for a company called Integra Life Sciences. We are based out of Princeton, New Jersey. I have been in this field for probably over 20 years. But interestingly, I have 3 engineering degrees. So you kind of probably wonder, how did you end up in regulatory affairs? I have a civil engineering degree, of which I practiced for about 4 years, and I have 2 graduate degrees in bioengineering. And I'm going to go back a little bit because I think, I grew up, and I think this story, I see that we have people all over the world, but my story, I think, resonates regardless of where you actually live. I grew up with a single mother, 3 kids, found herself, one day waking up needing to get a job. And she worked a lot of, very minimum wage jobs. So I learned the importance, one, of education and planning ahead, but we also, as a result, really didn't have the opportunity to go to college, kind of in a normal path. I personally was lucky enough, I was actually an athlete for many years and had the opportunity to go to college on a scholarship, which would not have happened otherwise. It would have been a very different path. When I went to college, one of the benefits of my parents, one of the great things they did is they gave us no direction. You could say this is a really good thing, right? Because it leaves every single door open to you. Like, they don't care what you do, just try to be happy. The disadvantage of that approach is also that they leave every door open to you and you have no direction, right? So it's kind of a double-edged sword. So because I was an athlete and I learned the importance for me personally of passion, I spent a lot of years trying to find where my passion is. So you will see in my career path, if you ever looked at it, very abrupt changes of direction over the years. And when I finally found out what I wanted to do, and that being regulatory affairs, and that's a whole nother story of how I got there, I spent a lot of time trying to kind of fit my messy career, my messy childhood into a very nice, neat path of what I thought corporate America wanted. And one day I really had an epiphany of like, this is really hard to do. I'm just going to stop doing that. And I realized that when I stopped doing that, it was kind of like the weight of the world gets lifted off your shoulders, and you realize all those things that you had to deal with adversity, essentially creating something out of nothing for yourself, learning how to deal with, change and all sorts of things in your life those are the things that really make you good at, or potentially good at, the job that you are, looking to do.
Yeah.
And I think it teaches you so many things that have really driven my ability to be successful in the job that I'm now at.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And it's really,
Louise,
I was going
I
to,
was
yeah, go on, Rosie.
I was going to say we've just had about a double the audience fly in. I wanted to say hi to a few more people.
Yes,
We've
please
actually got
do.
a previous live guest, Deborah Wild, coming in from San Diego. Hi,
Oh,
Deborah.
Deborah.
Thanks for
Yes.
joining. She was on our Ask the C-Suite in December. We've
Hmm.
got people coming in from the other side of the US, from Boston. So hi, Yen, welcome. We've also got some Europeans coming in too. We've got Gleb from Zurich. Welcome. Really excited for the conversation ahead. We've got Makiko from Frankfurt, even coming in. We've got Rizwan from Dubai. So, I mean, the global spread for this conversation is really exciting.
It is.
We've got a few questions to ask the guests ourselves, which will be a kind of
Yeah.
feeder for the conversation. But if you've got any questions, let's start sending them in now so they can get in the queue, because I'm sure it's going to be a long queue for questions.
Yes, yeah, 100%. And to help Rosie out, just pop in a queue at the start of your questions. So keep them coming through, because Jessica and Heather, I'm sure, are very keen to answer some of your questions directly. But before we go into the Q&A, a question that I've got, apart from obviously you both sharing why it was important for you to be a part of the Lift Up community, but also if you could give us a bit of insight as to what you feel has been your one core superpower that I guess has got you to kind of where you are to date. So if we start with Heather.
Thanks, Louise. And just to really emphasize, I think it's important for us to join groups like this and create a community, because you have to have advocacy, mentorship, role modeling, to be able to help each other, give transparency to some of these things, because like both Jessica and I, it's a long and winding path, nothing straightforward, and you've got to dispel the assumptions about how people get to where they are today, and the different skills that contribute to that. So it lifts the lid of the secrets of success, which is actually so diverse. So if I were going to pick a superpower, it very much relates to what Jessica said. Is I describe it as authenticity. And when you shed all of your assumptions about and fears, about what people think, about how you come across to people, all of the baggage of these assumptions, and you let it go and focus on, the goals at hand, that empathy for other people, you're able to be more authentic. So I think empathy and authenticity come hand in hand, because you're understanding people's position, you're assuming good intent, and you're creating a trusted relationship that allows you to really deeply engage and go for a common goal together, and really do that in a sincere and authentic way. So I think that's been like hugely transformational from when I was younger in my career. I was a real like go-getter and like super achiever, and I thought like I'd need that validation externally from achievement, and probably leaving a lot of people behind, and then actually when you realize teamwork and empathy and understanding, and then being more authentic about your common goals and how you relate to people, you create like caring connections that make you so much stronger at work, and then you can solve much more complex problems, and really bring people on board with different level of vision that you would have had before. So the courageous authenticity, I think, is probably one of the most important things.
Yeah, I like that. And did you use carrying connections? I don't think I've heard of that phrase, but I love that. And that is part of collaboration, isn't it?
Yeah.
Collaboration, communication, teamwork. I think they're probably all feminine behaviors and traits that have been seen in generations. And that collaborative piece is so important, isn't it? To build and bring people on that journey with you, so you're not alone.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the caring connections, and it fosters like inclusivity and understanding of diversity, and all the things that we know are really successful in the workplace now. So that's why it's a superpower at work.
Great, lovely.
Love it.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. Jessica, over to you.
Yeah.
So, Lift Up. I know you were really keen on joining the community, and we
Yes.
could be more pleased to have you. What was important for you, I guess, to join, and what do you feel your superpower is in the workplace?
So, Heather, that was a great answer. It's going to be hard to kind of, I think I'm just going to add to yours. I might steal your answer too, but joining Lift Up. So, I am not by nature, a joiner of a lot of things. I think I end up there in very different ways. But I do know that, from my story, you probably gathered, I didn't get here on my own. There were so many people along the way, whether it was a coach, a teacher, a neighbor, a community, a friend. And so I've realized over time that if I can give something back, that I should, right? I'm very motivated to try to give something back. I don't sit here with the notion that, I have all the answers or that my path was so much, more difficult or anything like that. But I might have, hopefully a tidbit for people that are listening that they can use or relate to or something like that. And so for me, it's about joining a community where you can share those experiences and learn from each other, or really just listen to each other, right? Sometimes it's not about helping, it's just about listening and relating and having empathy for other people. So I think that was really my drive for being part of the community. As far as my superpower, this is tough, not because I have hundreds of them for sure. But I think that they're all, for me, there's maybe not one that really stands out, because I think there's a lot of things that really got me to where I was. I think though, if I have to think about it, and I'm not going to be able to use one word to describe it, maybe 3 words, but my ability to kind of cut through and see true north, because a lot of times there's a lot of noise that happens. And I feel like I am able to really kind of find, the root of whatever it is, whether it's an issue or a problem, or even a mentoring relationship, to try to help somebody kind of get to that next step. I think that that's probably one of the things I do well.
Intuition.
Superpower, I don't know, but yes, I think that's something that I bring everywhere, whether it's a job or anything else.
Brilliant.
So Jessica, am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
No, because I think there's something I've heard in your story, and that I think if I'm allowed to add another superpower to talk about is resilience.
You can have hundreds.
I know, we all
Why
do,
not?
right? Which one do we choose? But resilience, and like you told a story about like your mother's resilience, and like I feel like that's something, talk about women's in particular have a capacity for resilience, and then maybe we can chat about all the different things that allow you to have that. But hearing your story and like all the things in relocations, for example, I didn't mention I have 3 kids, so I have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and an 11-year-old now, and it's like the juggling and the capacity. But what makes you resilient is like this cutting through, like you said, made me think of it to the crux of the matter, that focus. And actually knowing when there's an important goal, you literally can do anything to get it done. Like, so if something's going on with your kids, or like you have no choice, that accountability is 100%. So the capacity for accountability, and then all the good spirit that gets you able to apply that to a workplace, means you can literally solve any problem. Nothing is impossible, because you have the capacity to break it down and solve it, like no matter what it is. So it's given me like a huge capacity for being more visionary, because I know I can accomplish anything, because the crazy amount of juggling and things I've had to do in the past has given me the trust in myself that I know I can do it when it's important, and everyone else can too.
Yeah, and from a workplace perspective, would you say that kind of falls into organization as well? If you look at some of these core top behaviors, over generations, it tends to be being able to multitask and organize, because like you've said, you've got 3 children. I mean, I know, I'm working 8:30 to 6. I get home at 7. The moment I'm walking through the door, I'm reading school book with my daughter, and then I'm doing extra spellings with her half an hour later. And it, whilst then, you always feel like you're kind of doing something. And I appreciate, no matter really what gender you're at, you could potentially be doing it all, but it is just being able to have that true north, but multitask, organize, cut through the priorities, and what's really important is, I think
there's a great word
resonated.
Yeah, no, there's a great term for that is hypervigilance.
Mhm.
You really are like you're like counting the seconds on the microwave to like optimize, everything. Like
You are
everything really
absolutely
matters.
right.
There's a
30
vigilance, like
seconds. What can I
hypervigilance.
do?
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's
I
absolutely
I
true.
want to take this moment probably to actually ask the audience.
Oh,
Mhm.
I'd like to hear from the audience, what do you think is your superpower? We've got a few coming in now talking about, oh, I absolutely agree, says Sabine. Resilience is an absolute superpower. We had a lot of mention around authenticity, as well as being able to see true north, resonating that with 100%. So I love that. If you guys have got any superpowers that you feel have been missed so far, please comment. But I would like to throw a question in. It's quite an interesting question from the audience. I'm just going to get it up.
There's so much coming through, Rosie. I
But
can't keep up.
yeah, it's literally it's brilliant. But please do put your cues in front of your questions, and I'll be able to find them. But I can't see who's asked this, so thank you for asking. But what is the biggest opportunity that you said yes to, even though you were afraid throughout your career?
Oh, I
Jessica, I'm
like
going to throw that your
So,
way first.
this is great. I actually have a couple kind of key turning points in my life, and actually, I'm going to answer it in a little different way because I actually said no to something that became an opportunity, and I'll explain why. So, I was working at a company, and so again, my background is my history is very convoluted. It took me about 13 years to finish my PhD. There was an 11-year break, and I had an opportunity to finish my degree. I was working at a company full time, and I asked for 2 days off a week. At the time, I was a single parent, and so I had to take a cut in pay, and they agreed. But then they had layoffs. And they said to me, if you don't go to school, we will not lay you off. You need to be full time. And this was my only opportunity. I mean, I was pushing 40. And I just thought, how could you do this to me? Because if I don't do it now, I'm not going to do it. Like, this is my one last chance to do this. And I took a chance on myself. And I said, I'm sorry, but no, I'm going to finish my degree. You can lay me off. And somebody gave me some excellent advice and said, you might want to be a consultant. So I offered to be a consultant, and they hired me back 3 weeks later as a consultant. And so what was awesome about it was then I got to write my own schedule, because obviously as you're doing research, you never know where you're going to be when. And then 3 years later, I went from being a regulatory specialist to being the director of regulatory because of the work I did as a consultant. I stayed at the company. It ended up being a phenomenal experience. So to me, that was, it had so many facets to it, because not only was it, we don't often take a chance on ourselves, and because it's scary. I mean, I was a single parent. I was the sole source of financial support. And it was really scary for me. But I just knew deep down that I needed to do that. That was the right decision. And it worked out phenomenally well. Now, no, it doesn't always, right? I mean, there's always that, it's not like you make those decisions and they're always great. But, for me, it really did. And again, it comes back to that taking a chance on yourself, and saying yes to yourself first, and trusting your ability to succeed, and knowing what your true north is, what is the right direction for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Sometimes the biggest risk can be the biggest reward, but it is a very difficult decision to make at that point in time. But thank you for sharing. That was very personal, but it was lovely to hear, and I'm sure it's inspired many. And Heather, what about you? Same question to you.
I guess I'll tell the story many of us have is of this imposter syndrome, which of course makes you frightened of every new job. So no matter how competent other people may think I am, I think they're crazy, and I'm literally frightened of every single new job I've taken, because it's always bigger, it's always scarier, there's always a wider scope, and there's been some big jumps like that come along with stretches of like change in disease area, change in function, change in country, or multiple versions of that all at once. and always jobs I've never done before. And I've always said yes. And it's like betting on yourself, and being like, well, let's see what happens. Like I'd always think like, I'll do the very best I can for whatever my task at hand is. And then all those other skills and things kick in that you have to go with the trust in yourself and the blind faith to know that all the things you've done where you can pull out of your pocket and your way of doing things help you accomplish the new tasks to be done. And then all those skills about like reaching out to your network and understanding systems connectivity and, all the spirit behind leadership makes you able to accomplish any new role, no matter how scary it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's probably,
great.
I think literally everything. Right.
So I have this rule that I kind of live by, or try to anyway, is that if there's an opportunity presented to me and I feel afraid, that's when my hand has to go up.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. I love
afraid
that.
most of your life, right? You're constantly, because you're always like, okay. But it's a challenge, right? And it's a way to kind of show yourself, that you can do these things, that you can step up. But yeah.
But Jessica, that shows you it's important, right? If you have like a feeling about it, if it gives you the wiggles.
That's exactly right. Exactly. Listen, yeah.
It actually is like a higher caliber, step, and it probably is more important for you to try and do. And then the other thing I just related to your story on, we say, oh, maybe it wasn't the right decision, but you never know, right? You just need to make the decisions.
Right.
And there's many things, like I feel like I've gone off the beaten path, but then now all those things that happened or that I learned or that experience have now come back to serve me. So even when you think you run something wrong or go on the wrong course, it never is, right? It always adds value to something you've learned or something you can bring forward later. So never be afraid of making those decisions, because it's always going to turn out to be something.
I love it.
And positive for your learn. Yeah.
100% agree.
Great advice.
I was going to say, there's so many topics to get through with these questions coming in, so I am going to change the topic slightly. But just before I do, we do actually have a community announcement. We are officially launching our members group on LinkedIn. This is free and accessible to all, but you do have to be a member to have access to the content. So we're going to be driving member-driven, KOL-driven content. So key opinion leaders sharing their best practices, not only on female leadership, but females in life science. So talking about different issues that we're actually facing in the industry. One of my colleagues is definitely going to be posting it in the chat right now. So if you can see it on the comments, join the link and ask to request to become a member, and we'll have you in there today. We look forward to really growing this members group page.
Thanks, Rosie. Thank you. And just to flip in, we've got such a high amount of people engaging. I'm conscious that we may not be able to work through everybody, but we've got here the ability to see the true north is due to the engineering background. Jessica, somebody's popped on here. I resonate with that 100%. I love that. We've got Sherry. Thank you, Sherry. Great book to help foster authenticity is Presence by Amy Cuddy. So go and check it out if you haven't read that one. We've got Sabine. I agree, absolutely. Resilience is about superpower. I've got here, I love this. Again, Sherry, I can upload the top rack of the dishwasher in 30 seconds. Wow. Empathy and communication. We have got so much here. My superpower is trust. Thank you, Joanna, for sharing this. Transparency, since it creates the proper environment to bring all the other superpowers on board. Love that. I'm not sure if there's any questions here that you're able to pull out, Rosie, because there's quite a lot.
Rolling through them. So I'm going to bring this one up because I think it's quite an interesting question. Thank you, Joanna. So overall, during your career, did you see more jealousy and envy among women than among men? And if yes, would changing this strengthen our representation in directive or executive positions?
I know. Who should we go to first? Is there any thoughts on this one, Heather? Shall we flip through to you quickly? What are your thoughts?
That's an interesting one. I guess I'm lucky that I don't. Maybe I didn't realize, but I'm lucky I don't. I suffered from that. I will tell you a story where I think it was more like your credentials. So there's some people who judge you or don't judge you, or almost like think you don't deserve certain roles or something, based on what kind of like credentials you have or how many degrees you have, or sometimes in pharma, whether you're a physician or not. So I saw more of this type of behavior, perhaps of based on that principle. But I've been super lucky that I've had really great companies, like really inclusive companies, very supportive. And full of people who are able to be developed, that when no one is stuck and you support everyone, saying, how do we strengthen that, is by making an inclusive development-based organization. So everyone has a chance. That's a meritocracy as well, that everyone, when you work hard or you're able to adopt new skills, then you're able to move forward. So there's no reason that you feel like, oh, well, why are they going forward and I'm not? So I think that may be a symptom of the great organizations that I've been a part of, but I can absolutely see how, that might be the case. And yes, we do have to fight against that. But I think when everyone feels fairness and able to develop, then you wouldn't have that problem.
Yeah, equality is key. Yeah, no, absolutely. And Jessica, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts
I
on that.
So when I was because I have an engineering background, right? As a civil engineer, you end up as, one of the few. The ratios are very much skewed toward men, at least in my experience. And so I got used to working primarily in a very male-dominated environment. When I moved into regulatory affairs, it started to become more balanced. So I've kind of seen both. I think, I would change the wording that was in the question from kind of the envy, jealousy piece. Is they're very different in how, like, if you have mostly women versus mostly men, it's very different on how we relate to each other. And I think sometimes that can be construed as envy, jealousy, that sort of thing. But I think the reality is it's a different way that we communicate and relate to each other. I think I have seen it over the years, but nothing significant. And I think it's very kind of to what Heather was saying. I think it's very easy, especially with an organization that's very supportive of diversity and lifting up women and, gender equality and these sorts of things. I think it attenuates any of that in the workplace. And I've seen a lot of that happen, especially more recently, where there really isn't, I'm not seeing it like I may have in the past.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. No, thank you.
But maybe also, if I can just add, like, maybe also there's something about, like, when you're a leader or just a person in work and you're showing vulnerability, again, that authenticity, vulnerability, it's nobody is going to be envious or jealous or horrible to somebody who is authentic, genuine, and vulnerable. So I think how you present yourself as an authentic person, as a woman, and relate to other women, and you show behavior to support them and cheer them on and be a mentor for them, it again, like, attenuates any of that kind of behavior.
Yeah, no, that's an awesome point. I absolutely agree that it really comes from the leadership and how you're behaving to foster the similar behavior in the people that are on your team.
Yeah,
100%.
Very interesting. Yeah, thank you for that. We've got another question here that actually caught my eye, which I thought was quite an interesting one from Frank. So if either one of you have obviously previously led and built teams, as a leader in your space, how do you make sure as a leader that diversity and inclusion is well served? I don't know what your thoughts are on that, because obviously I'd also imagine that from a diversity and inclusion perspective, you've got the business as well that's obviously supporting you. So this may not just be an individual question, but coming to you first then, Heather, what are your thoughts with that? How do you try to get that balance?
I think it's like multifaceted. There's obviously behaviors and training that come with an organization. There's quite a lot of like nudge tools, say, that you can have. So when you're interviewing, to make sure there's like reminders of, like, remember, these are the types of bias that are possible. Consciously acknowledge them, and then nudge yourself to make sure you avoid that. Role modeling, again, like the inclusivity, like showing and really walking the talk of who you hire, the diversity and the range of that, celebrate and support diversity through different initiatives. I think there's just a lot of role modeling and a lot of help to bring that conscious leadership, conscious awareness of potential bias, because we are all human. in the end. And there's a lot of unconscious, things that you do as a human. So the openness you have to embrace that, help coach other people to have those tools and use them, and walk the talk.
Unconscious bias is one that we actually talked about previously on a few live broadcasts ago, and it is an interesting one because I've got to say I was on the phone, and I'm sure a lady will remember it was a week or so ago, and I said 10-man band on the phone. And after I said it, I was mortified. She corrected me straight away. And as soon as she did, I thought, oh, blimey, I need to rephrase that one. But I think often with unconscious bias is being, even if it's after you've said it, is being aware of what you said so you can try and train yourself, because we are all human. And, if you spent years in a workplace, you pick up language that has perhaps been used over generations. So it's just training yourself out of that. So I hold my hands up to that one, and I was quickly rephrase my sentence. But yeah, diversity and inclusion. Jessica, I don't know whether you've got any thoughts in regards to this. I'm also very aware that I'm going very yellow. I don't quite understand what's going on with my lighting, so I do apologise if I go in and out. But yes, Jessica,
no, it's a really good question, and we talk about it so much. It made me think of I've worked at very large companies where we talked about diversity and inclusion all the time. And we had metrics on what it needed to be. And we had all these kind of initiatives. But then we would go to an internal meeting of 250 people, and there'd be one female on the stage in 3 days, and you're like, it starts with us. This is not really that difficult. And then I've been at companies where diversity and inclusion is something that, of course, is an initiative, but we don't talk about it much because we just have it. And so because it is just part of our DNA of the company and the culture. And so I think what you were saying, Heather, is it has to be kind of grown from within, and the rest kind of happens. Now, it is often in certain fields very difficult to have, sometimes you put a job out and you only get a certain, section of the population, and that's a fact. But you do have to proactively, look for those candidates that do bring something different to the table, because it doesn't often, it doesn't always happen just automatically. But I do think it's a culture first, and then you can talk about metrics and driving it and that sort of thing. But it really has to come from within.
I absolutely agree. I spoke to a gentleman a couple of weeks ago, and it was very much a case of, externally, the diversity and inclusion is almost really important for their business, almost what they're externally portraying, when actually the focus really needs to be what they're doing internally about it. Like from an operational perspective, what are they doing about changing it from a cultural, internal point of view? And then that ripple effect. And it's not just D&I being a word branded about, because it's the in topic at the moment. So I think that's a really important piece. And actually talking about an interview process, for example, I think understanding almost like in a gap analysis perspective as to the culture of your current team. And, when you're looking at potential female behaviors, for example, and superpowers, it's just looking broadly at what you've got at the moment. Is it diverse? Where's the gaps? And kind of hiring on that basis. So, that was just something I thought of when you were talking then.
And Louise, just one more thing, like maybe a quick win, if people don't have in their organization like women's communities, and also to have men in there championing the women's communities and actually having events and properly making the forums, then that's a very quick win, to do, as well as, clear targets on like watching proportionality of roles and pay equality and all of the metricide things that you can do, creating the communities of mentorship and support.
Really agree, Heather, because it's not just about women supporting women, it's about everybody supporting everybody, and the male advocates as well. So completely agree. So thank you, Frank, for that question. That was brilliant. We've got Christine pop up here. Superpower, trust your gut. 100%. How many times we talk about intuition and then we say, oh, well, my gut instinct is, and then you don't end up following it. So trust yourself. Women doubt themselves way more than men do. Don't let imposter syndrome win. Thank you for your thoughts and comments on that one, Christine. I don't know what you're seeing in here as well, Rosie. There's just
I've got a question here actually. I don't know whether we want to actually maybe finish on that question. So I'm going to throw this one in. I know we've talked about kind of your superpowers in the workplace, but I want to talk about what's one of the, maybe not the most important leadership trait that women can leverage, but what do you feel is a leadership trait that you use in your day-to-day that you leverage on?
That's a good one. I'll jump in if that's okay.
Yes, sorry, I didn't direct
Yes,
you
sorry.
there.
Because
I went a bit blinded then.
know,
Thanks, Jessica.
wanting to think out loud. This is one. I don't know that it's a straight answer for me, but I think one of the things that's always been really hard for me is that the last comment of trusting your gut and trusting yourself. And I think, I look to certain people. You find people in your community, your work that you respect, and you think, wow, I want to be like them. And for a long time, if you just do it like that, where I want to be like them, you start emulating behaviors that aren't really authentic to yourself. And I think that the most important leadership trait is, and I know it's kind of been used a lot right now, but is this idea of authenticity, is knowing what you want to take from people, but knowing how to make yourself unique and being okay with that. If you have more empathy than everybody else in your leadership team, that's actually okay. And own it and embrace it and use it as your superpower. But I think that idea of knowing what you want to keep for yourself, to keep yourself authentic and real and unique in your leadership style, and take from other people the things that will help, but don't feel like you have to be exactly like them. I think for me, that's been the biggest kind of guide that I've used. And often it's scary because you think, wow, they're going to think I'm, ridiculous for doing that. But, you try it, you just try it and you see where it goes. And I think, if you do it with transparency and authenticity and, and that in a very open environment, it usually goes over pretty well.
Brilliant. Thank you
And then
for
just
sharing
one
that, Jessica.
question. Just one question for that answer is, has there been a moment in your career where maybe you've tried to emulate another leader and it just hasn't worked for you and your team?
Yes. And I'm struggling to think of like the one time, but I've had several, obviously, managers, bosses. And, I've been lucky enough to have a lot of respect for many of them. I had one manager that, was extremely rigid in his style. He was very formal, and I thought, wow, I need to be more formal and I need to be, and I'm a very disciplined, organized person, but I tend to be not quite as formal. But I tried to start going down there and it fell flat. It didn't work. And there's lots of examples of that, but yeah, there has been a lot, of things that people do that I just decided, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to try it. And then I was like, I'm not going to.
Yeah. No, that's
Can I
good.
build on Jessica's point? Because I think a lot of people think that like that rigidity or forcefulness or like is power, the withholding knowledge, like all this kind of old fashioned red top down stuff like equals leadership. And actually like creative and modern leadership is like the exact opposite of that. And actually, to be more caring and empathetic, all the things we're talking about actually will bring you more success than being like this rigid kind of top down harsh person. That doesn't mean leadership to me. And just I was thinking, thank you, Jessica, gave me the opportunity to answer the leadership trait. I think there's something about setting ego and reactivity aside. So having that like emotional regulation is a really key skill, and set aside the self-orientation to actually think of what's best for the group, what's best for a longer term outcome versus that like hot emotion in the moment, that you can really face that. And that allows others, even if something's happening, it allows others to feel their own development, helps people find answers, or even if they make mistakes, it's fine, without shame, blame, or punishment, all those kind of non-productive emotional kind of attack reactions that I think maybe women could be a little bit more in control of with the emotional regulation.
I really like
Very
that piece.
interesting. Yeah,
We've actually we've got 50
I
seconds
we
left.
have. I kind of feel
It
like
does go so quickly.
it does. It goes so fast. I want to sneak in something that maybe you could just answer in a phrase. But if you had to give your former self, younger self, a piece of advice, what would it be, Jessica?
Oh, relax.
You even said
Like,
that, relax. I believe you.
so many things that are going to happen that you have no control over. Just relax.
Enjoy the
Yeah.
ride. Okay, and Heather?
Trust yourself, and you don't need to push so hard.
Mm-hmm.
Just
I
really
love
have
that.
that
Okay,
trust.
I love that. I think, yeah, I'm going to take that. I think they're two fabulous things. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much to all of the audience that's got engaged today. For any of you that obviously we've not had the opportunity to answer any of your questions, we'll please try and go back into bear with us. We'll go back into the comments and we'll try to answer them. As Rosie's obviously said, we've got the community announcement of setting up the membership group. We've got all of our old key speakers that were really keen to join this group. We've had a lot of conversations over the past couple of months of women and leaders and experienced and academia people in life sciences that really just want to share and learn from each other, that can't wait to get into this group. In fact, we spoke to an individual a couple of weeks ago who even wants to launch her book on it. So some really exciting, really exciting news that we want to be sharing on this membership group. So join. I think our colleague here, Chloe, in the comments has put in a link to the community group. But otherwise, we're back for the next live event, which is going to be taking place in March. I believe it's the 8th of March, which is the week of International Women's Week. We've got some exciting material that's going to be going out from a lot of our community group over the duration of
Yes.
that week. So super excited about that. So thank you very much to both
Thank you
Heather and
all.
Jessica.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Yeah,
you so
Thank
much
thanks
you.
for joining
everybody.
us. It's been a lot of
Thank you.
fun. And thank you to Rosie, my co-host, and for all of you that are watching, enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.